raised the level of the lake to 30 meters higher than it is today. Frequent fluctuations have often led to modifications of the shoreline. The topography is also shaped by flooding and by rivers changing course. Erosion and sediment deposits have thus transformed the confluence of the Rhone and Arve rivers. Ever since the Neolithic period, people have settled along the shores of the lake. On the sand and clay banks that then closed off the bay, archaeological excavations have uncovered evidence of lake dwellings. Thousands of wooden posts have been found in Paki and Ovive areas and at the Grange and Plongeon sites. These historical remains attest to the existence of several lakeside villages around 1000 BC. Two centuries later, these settlements had to be abandoned due to the rising lake levels. In this shifting landscape, the two piers de Miton, or stones of Miton, survivors of the glacial floods, were adopted very early on as fixed and solid marker stones for measuring lake water levels. In 1823, Guillaume Dufour, the cantonal engineer and future general, had a plaque fixed onto them that is still in place today, serving as the reference point for altitude measurement in Switzerland. These stones are no doubt the oldest indication of the Genevan people's desire to measure and control much coveted territory. In the 2nd century BC, at the time of the Roman conquests, the Allobroges, a Celtic tribe, settled on the summit of a hill. This fortified camp was strategically located at a frontier post and crossing point between two worlds, the Celtic and the Roman. In 58 BC, the Romans destroyed the bridge over the Rhone to prevent the migration of the Helvetii tribe. Julius Caesar relates the episode in the Gallic Wars, which contains the earliest mention of Geneva. The Roman city took up position on this natural defensive site, already protected on three sides, to which surrounding fortifications were added. At the turn of the 4th century AD, the city, still limited to the area of the hill, rose to the rank of episcopal city. 700 years later, Geneva remained confined within its fortifications. It was not until the 12th century that the city began to expand, following a time-honored pattern. Buildings sprung up outside the walls, often around a market or an access road. Then, a new order closed these faubourgs or outlying settlements in order to protect the city and guarantee supplies. This is how Wall 4, once both a market and a crossroads, came to be attached to the city. As the faubourg expanded, Geneva tripled in size. By around 1450, the population had increased fivefold due to the international success of the city's fairs. Geneva became more densely built and rose up proudly, dominated by St. Peter's Cathedral. With its 10,000 inhabitants, the city was an important trading and financial center within Europe. It was around this time that Conrad Witz painted the miraculous Gulf of Fishes on one of the panels in the cathedral's altarpiece. This painting, whose setting is the Bay of Geneva, is the earliest known faithful portrait of a landscape in art history. The main theme of this masterpiece is prosperity. The central figure of Christ turns towards the left bank and the Duchy of Savoy. Looking closer, we can make out the stones of Miton, on which the oars of fishermen appear to rest. The painting gives us valuable information about the landscape and the lives of the population in the 15th century. On the jetties linking the houses of the low town, some people are drawing water from the lake while others are talking. In the background, on the fertile farmland divided by hedges, peasants work in the fields. Above the area known as Pré-l'Évêque, some men are practicing archery. Further to the left, a cavalcade bears the standard of the Duke of Savoy, in a tribute to the House of Savoy and its then peaceful relations with the city. After 1535, the situation was to change radically. Geneva freed itself from the power of the prince-bishops and adopted the Reformation. The Protectorate of Savoy came to an end. The authorities decided to demolish all the outskirts, removing the beautiful and retaining the necessary. There followed a long period of great tension between the city and the Catholic Duchy of Savoy, with the Protestant Republic of Geneva turning on itself. A fortification system with numerous bastions was constructed in several stages. In 1602, the Duke of Savoy attempted to conquer the city but failed. This episode, known as the Escalade, from the attempt to scale the walls of Geneva, was however a severe test for the city's defences. Geneva remained threatened by artillery attacks of ever-increasing range. A continually enlarged glacis cut the city off from the outside world. The only contact was through 3 gates that were closed each evening. The inner harbour was surrounded by booms, chains, towers and bastions. The lake water was channeled into peripheral moats to strengthen the city's defence system. Geneva was walled in behind the elegant geometry of its fortifications, where it was to remain in splendid isolation for the next 300 years. Although impregnable from the outside, the fortified city was ravaged by the fire that destroyed one of the bridges over the Rhone in 1617. This incident led to concerns about the poor hygiene and safety conditions. Growth in the 18th century increased the already high density of the tightly packed buildings that faced away from the lake. A sign of changing times, it was stated that its enclosed and insalubrious aspect no longer attracts attention to rejoice hearts. The redevelopment of the Quai de Berg and the Grand Quai on the other side of the bay drew clearly demarcated boundaries between the city and the lake. The three-dimensional model created by Auguste Magnier gives us a detailed picture of Geneva in 1840. It shows a walled city extending right down to the lake, with its array of windmills and its floating and waterside wash houses. Its picturesque but dark and narrow streets call for extensive modernization. The demolition of the city's fortifications began after the Fascist revolution led by James Fassi in 1846. The space thus created formed a wide belt around the historical centre. This area was divided up into a grid system of streets intersecting at right angles, suitable for large-scale real estate development. The lakefront changed dramatically. Large hotels and apartment buildings transformed its appearance, as well as the scale of the city's buildings. Fine houses set in beautiful grounds appeared. Extensive views of the lake and the Mont Blanc were opened up. So the design of Geneva's urban history is intimately linked to the use of its lake. The city primarily grew by successive encroachments into the lake, filling in the edges, dividing reclaimed land into plots, increasing both in density in these areas and sending out harbour platforms into the lake. At the end of the 19th century, the city turned itself out like a glove and presented the appearance of a well-organized city. The desire to control the hydrological regime became a reality. The lake level was regulated by a dam at the Pont de la Machine. The forces Maurice factory ensured efficient water distribution for the different districts of the city. A symbol of this metamorphosis, the jet d'eau or water fountain, was installed in the center of the bay and was to become the emblem of the city. Transportation networks developed in the increasingly industrialized and built-up areas around Geneva. This scattered growth contrasted with the density of the historic center and the regular grid system of the streets surrounding it. In the last century, Geneva confirmed its international status. It now enjoys the image of a world city that also assumes its role as a regional and cross-border metropolis, with its transport networks and infrastructure systems. True to its purpose as a center for exchange, the area is a hub for increasingly dense mobility flows. In an alternative format, real-time digital information traces new shapes around the Bay of Geneva, draws and redraws the features of the land on this same palimpsest.